because you have been so successful and so much more productive. Made my entire grade skyrocket. To this day, I still remember it. A lot easier than you think. Studying is something everybody needs, but that doesn't mean you have to spend hours and hours studying every day to achieve your goals. As an Asian, I have always been pressured to do well academically and outside of school. Because in China, there are kids who are playing world-class level piano in middle school. There are kids doing math 5 years ahead than the kids here in America, and there are kids who only sleep 2 hours a night, so they have more time to study to achieve those perfect grades. Now, I've been really fortunate growing up. My parents have not been on me that much to maintain a perfect level, but that doesn't mean I still don't feel the pressure to maintain a certain level, you know? I think, honestly, I don't feel that pressure because I have always found it pretty easy to maintain good grades, and like, not to toot my own horn, but my grades have always been steadily good, aside from one tragic B in Spanish freshman year, but other than that, they've been pretty good. And yet, I don't really study. I think I study a lot less than most of the kids in my grade. Listen, I hear your cries, because I know school is starting back up. It is really getting into the swing of things. Maybe you're already starting to have unit tests like I am, and you're wondering how you too can study like an Asian to achieve your goals. So, keep listening to find out. Before we begin, there is a misconception that you must get out of your head, and it's that studying longer equals studying better. And that is not true. Just because you studied for hours and hours doesn't mean you are any more prepared for that next class or next test than you are if you didn't study at all. In fact, it probably just burned you out more. There's something called the Pareto principle, which basically says that 80% of your output comes from 20% of your input. And that means instead of putting 100% in to get 100%, you only need to put 20% to get in 80%, and that's enough. So instead of running yourself dry by studying excessively, there are ways to study smarter and not harder, so you actually achieve your goals without completely ruining yourself, okay? And before we get into the actual study tips, I'm going to give you 2 tips on how to study less. First of all, break your studying into 30-minute chunks. That way, you study for 30 minutes and then you take a 5-minute break, walk around, look at something else, relax your mind. This way, you are more productive during each of your 30-minute studying sessions, and you also end up studying less because you are more productive, you are more focused, and that prevents you from studying for such a long period of time and then burning yourself out. Because if you study for 12 hours, that is no better than studying for 2 hours in 30-minute chunks. Because when you're studying for 12 hours, by the first hour, the second hour mark, you start decreasing, you start getting fatigued, you start getting unfocused and distracted, and that makes the rest of your studying less productive and probably burns you out more, makes you feel more tired than if you broke it down into smaller chunks, took breaks in between, and then you ended up studying less. My second tip is to make a to-do list. Sometimes I get really overwhelmed when I have a lot of tasks to do, or when they don't have a black and white finish point, like if there's just a really broad task that I need to do and there's no set finish mark. I will make a to-do list, and that breaks everything down into small steps and sets an end point for these broad tasks, such as if I have to write my Common App essay, instead of just saying finish essay, that's so broad. When do I know when I'm finished? And that, when you look at it, can seem really overwhelming. But if you break it out and say, spend 30 minutes rewriting the introduction, that is so much easier for your brain to go and want to do because you know what you're actually doing instead of just having this broad thing that you want to do. It also makes it so much more rewarding when you check them off, because even though they're smaller steps, you're checking them off more frequently, and that helps you be more encouraged to work through the rest of your tasks. And it's just like saying, if you have $1, you only have 1 bill, right? But if you break it down into quarters, you have 4 things. Even though it all adds up to $1, you have 4 coins. And if you break down to pennies, you have 100 coins. Even though you still have the same monetary value, you have more things. That's just like when you finish that task, even though you have more tasks, they're smaller, easier to do, and more rewarding. It also helps reduce the procrastination you can feel when you feel so overwhelmed, because it fuels the success cycle. You are more encouraged to work through the rest of your list because you have been so successful in these other tasks. And now for the actual tips. So first of all, you have to recall. You cannot just remember. When you learn things, there are 2 neurons in your brain, and the path between point A and point B, you create that connection. But the more you use that connection, the stronger it gets and the easier you can think of it, right? So sometimes I'm rereading my notes and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally got this. I totally remember this. I know what this is talking about. But then I go and do a practice problem, or I go on the test and I find out I can't actually apply what I thought I knew because I didn't really know it that well, to be honest. And that's why you have to do practice problems, because the more you use that connection, the stronger that connection gets. And you know when there's a word that you think you know, you just can't spit it out? That's called the tip of the tongue phenomenon in psychology. That's because you have a connection in your brain from point A to point B, but it's not strong enough for you to just spit out just like that. And so the more you use that connection, the stronger it gets and the easier you can spit it out. And that's the same with practice problems. The more you do these practice problems and the more you apply your knowledge into these problems, the easier it will be for you to do these problems, get them right. And also when you do practice problems that you will see on the test, it makes it so much easier for you to perform well on these tests because you're already doing the physical problems that you are on the test. You just have to maybe change the numbers or change the application of it, and it is basically the same thing. Instead of just memorizing facts, you really have to understand the concepts behind these facts. You have to know why things are happening and why they are happening the way they are happening so that you can actually build off of it and apply it. You have to have the background of understanding what you're truly learning. You have to understand the base level of why things happen the way they do to then learn how to apply these things. For example, when I took pre-calc, we did trig, and on trig, there's the unit circle with, 3 pi over 2, your sine and cosine and whatever. And before that, I had learned the unit circle before, and I had it more or less memorized. I knew there were some fractional numbers, random pi's in places, and I got to pre-calc and my teacher showed us the video of the unit circle, and the video explained why the unit circle is the way it is, how the math adds up to make the whole thing 2 pi, instead of just telling us that these are the numbers where they go on a circle and that's it. And after that, I never had to struggle with the unit circle ever again. To this day, I still remember it because I truly learned what the concept was and why the unit circle was the way it was, so that it made it so much easier for me to build off of that and do all the trig that we had to do in that class. And I know a lot of my friends in my other classes with different teachers, they never saw that video of the unit circle, and to this day they are so confused about how to use a unit circle and why the unit circle is the way it is. And all it took is that one 5-minute video to explain to me the concepts behind the unit circle and trig for me to understand it and to truly apply it. But I know there are different types of studying. For math and science, using these tips to understand the concepts and go do practice problems can be really, really useful. I know for me in AP Bio, the understanding the concepts part was life-changing. It made my entire grade skyrocket. But for some subjects such as history, when it's a lot of memorization and not so conceptually based, it can be really difficult to use these techniques to succeed. And so for this, I have 2 different tips. And first of all, for me, rewriting my notes really worked. For world history, I know, especially when I was studying for my AP test, I rewrote all my notes in like pages and pages, and it really just helps me go over, especially like things I learned months ago. It really helped me go over that, and I just tried to, when I rewrote it, really like fill in the blank in my mind instead of just copying it mindlessly. That's not going to help you at all. You actively try to memorize and process and understand. And secondly, which I think is even better than rewriting your notes, because I know that can take a while, is mind mapping. In AP Psychology, for each of our tests, we were able to take a mind map. Part that really helped me was when I was reviewing, putting everything on a sheet of paper, connecting the dots between each of the points and each of the concepts, and then being able to step back and look at it as a whole was so useful. Just being able to see like the bigger picture of it made so much more sense in my mind, and especially for history. I know when I was studying wars, it was a lot of dates to memorize, a lot of different wars, different battles, different events that happened, but putting together on a timeline and being able to see how they each connected to the other and how they work together in the bigger picture was so useful. A big part of procrastination is just not starting. I procrastinate just like the next person, but I found that one thing that really helps me is just starting. Now, how do you do this? Because I know it's a lot easier said than done. Well, I look at my to-do list, my extensive long to-do list, remember, from my other tip, and I picked the easiest one, the one that is the most appealing to me. I tell myself I just need to do 5 minutes of it. After 5 minutes, if I don't want to do it, I'll do something else. I'll go read or take a walk. But a lot of the times, most of the time, when you start it, it's so easy to keep going because that starting is the hardest part. So when you tell yourself you're only going to do 5 minutes of it, it makes it easier for you to start, and then it makes it easier for you to keep going because you already started. You might as well keep going. And then you find out it's really not that bad after all. So sometimes you just need to start. Do that 5-minute rule. If you really are just not in the mood, then do something else that's more productive with your time, because sitting there forcing yourself to do work is not going to be productive and it's not a good use of your time. But a lot of the times, just starting will make you keep going. I find that studying is so much easier to do when I have a set space for studying. For me personally, my room is designated for relaxing and sleeping, and then there's one part of my living room that I always go to study in when I'm working from home, and that makes it easier for me to relax in my room and study at that part of the living room. And that's because your brain likes shortcuts. Your brain is designed in a way that if you always do one task in one area and another task in another area, when you enter this area, your brain will automatically switch to doing this task and focus better doing this task, and then different tasks in a different area. So even if it's something as simple as one side of your desk or one corner of your room, designate one area for you to do your work and you will find that you'll be so much more productive. Let's say you finally get to studying and you keep receiving notifications from your phone and you keep going to check in. Well, how is that going to help you be more productive? I know for me, there are two big distractors for me when I'm studying, and it's my phone and food. And let's talk about phone first. So your phone is a huge distraction. When you're setting yourself these 30-minute chunks like I talked about before, you can make it so that you do not look at your phone at all during these 30 minutes. Put it on Do Not Disturb. Mine is always on Do Not Disturb, and slide it somewhere that you can't see. I usually just put it behind my computer, and because it's out of sight, out of hearing, out of mind. It helps you focus so much better. And during your 5-minute breaks, you can go check your phone. You can just briefly see if you have anybody you need to respond to, and then go back to doing work for your next 30 minutes. And second of all, for me, I get really distracted by food. Like I always am craving things, and that is why I work better outside in different areas than I do in my home, because I know that food's right over there and I can go get whatever I want to eat, and that distracts me so much. And so something that works for me is, first of all, staying away from the actual area. Again, because I'm near the kitchen, then my brain is automatically wired to want more food, like I said before. And then I try to ask myself, am I really hungry? And if I am, I'll obviously go and get some food, and I'll try to get something that like takes longer to eat, so that it like satisfies me for a longer period of time, but maybe doesn't like fill me up as much, or maybe it's something lighter, just like popcorn or some fruit, or drinks help me, especially because you're constantly sipping on it, but that doesn't like mean you're still eating things, you know, and you can still focus on your tasks. So eliminate distractions, because that can really hinder your performance in studying. In the end, you can't do anything without balance. If you study a lot and then sacrifice exercise, sleep, mental health, a social life, that is not sustainable, and you are not going to be happy in the long term. Because what is the point of getting good grades? It's usually to get a good job and then be successful and have enough money and be happy. That is the basis of it all. So if you're not happy, what is the point? But let's say that you do this. It's midterm season and you study your absolute butt off for 2 weeks. You have 1 hour of sleep a day because you're studying so much, okay? And let's say that you do get good grades. Now what? You wake up so tired that you can't concentrate in school. And then after school, you have to work harder to understand the concepts that were taught in school that you didn't understand. And then you can't focus, so you have to study for even longer periods of time. And then that cuts into your sleep, which then makes you more tired the next day. And this is this vicious cycle, and it's not sustainable at all, and it doesn't work. I know what being busy is like, okay? I have 3-hour practices 6 days a week. I have days where I don't come home till 9 p.m. because of games. I do art, piano, I do schoolwork, I do YouTube, I do a lot outside of school too. And yet I have never gone to sleep past 11 since high school started because of schoolwork. That doesn't include like sleepovers, parties. Not that I go to many parties. I've never gone to sleep past 11 p.m. And how can I do that? Balance and persistence. I know that nothing would be sustainable if I didn't have a balance. So I do things that I know I need to do that are beneficial for my future, such as doing my schoolwork and doing like, you know, school things. And then I do things I love, like cooking, reading, things that bring me joy and bring me happiness. And then I do things that relax me, such as watching half an hour of my favorite show before bed. I have to do all of these things to make me happy and make it more sustainable for me to keep doing all of these things. There's a thing that I'm sure you've all seen is the triangle. It's like success, no, academic, school, grades, success, whatever, work, sleep, and social life. And they say that you can only have 2, not 3. I would say that I have 3 because I get good grades and I do a lot outside of school, so that's work. I don't sleep before 11 every single day. Sleep. And then my social life, I would say I have a social life only because of volleyball. I do have friends outside of volleyball, but not that many. But being able to spend hours every day with these people that I genuinely enjoy being with, and I genuinely love the sport, that combines it into one that's also exercise, and that's just like a perfect balance that I would say I totally recommend trying out a sport or a club that's something that like combines 2 in 1. Maybe I don't go to parties every weekend or go clubbing or have time to FaceTime my friends 3 hours every single day, but that doesn't mean I still don't have a social life, you know? So I would say I have all 3, and if I can do it, you can do it too. It is not impossible to have a balance of everything, to make yourself happy. And all of the things I said in this video work for me, and I think will work for most of you, but everybody is different. So do your research, work on different things, experiment, try things out, and find something that works for you, because there is something out there that will work for you. So the key to studying like an Asian is a lot easier than you think. The goals that you set are completely within reach. So use these tips and work towards those goals, because I believe in you. You will find something that clicks for you. So don't give up. So I wish you the best of luck with whatever your goal is, and I hope you subscribe.